Hello, Amanda English here. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for having me back, and I'm glad you came back for this video as well. And so we're just going to dive right into it. The importance of professional help. So I think this is kind of a no-brainer, but I do want to touch on this because it's important. Seeking professional help is crucial in addressing alcoholism. As already mentioned, sudden cessation and withdrawal from alcohol may be fatal. Medical intervention can assist in managing withdrawal symptoms, while therapy and counseling offer support mechanisms. So, those modalities, those avenues are very important. Okay, and they are necessary, especially in the very urgent, crucial phase of this. These are the most conventional means of urgent care. Throughout the Invisible Tears series, we will explore a more comprehensive perspective and approach, which goes beyond the conventional limitations. Okay, so things like, you know, there's kind of this perspective or view that, like, people have alcoholism or addictions due to trauma, that trauma is the main cause or the main culprit. Well, it certainly can play a significant role. But let's take, for example, and we'll get deeper into this in subsequent series as well. But let's take, for example, when your brain is already, operating in a certain way, and something traumatic happens to you, your response to that is very dependent on how your brain is processing that. Okay. So it is a component, but there's so much more to it than just trauma or, different things like that. However, those are a component, and they are important to address and work through. So let's take a look at these charts. This is super exciting for me because this chart right here on the left is actually what prompted me to go back to school, which I never saw coming, and get my doctorate in this field of naturorthopathics. So I know you can't see it very clearly right here. And again, at any time, feel free to pause the video, zoom in, what have you. But I will zoom in on this. So this chart on the left is in reference to amino acid deficiencies. Now, amino acids are the building blocks of neurotransmitters. Okay. So when there is a deficiency of amino acids, there's going to be a deficiency of the corresponding neurotransmitter. Now, deficiencies can occur for a variety of reasons and a combination of those things. So it may be lack of consumption of all essential amino acids. It may be due to food intolerances or food combination and the interference with the ability to metabolize, break down, and utilize those amino acids. Also, mineral deficiencies and vitamin deficiencies to carry out those metabolic processes play a role. And of course, genetic factors as well. Okay. So, but let's take a look at this chart because I want to make some illustration that's really going to make you think, I believe, and in a good way, opening and expanding your mind in a good way. So this column here are the amino acids, okay, and this column here are the corresponding neurotransmitters. This column is the addictive substances. When these deficiencies occur, the symptoms. This column is the symptoms that may manifest due to those deficiencies. And then this is the expected difference when those deficiencies are addressed. So let's zoom on this a little closer. So as you can see, let's look at dopamine and serotonin, for example, because those are two that most of us are pretty familiar with. So we associate dopamine. If you've heard enough or learned enough about it, it's the one that makes us feel good and feel motivated and ready to go conquer the world and different things like that. And then serotonin is the one that's like helps us feel calm and relaxed and serene. All right. So if you think about it, it makes sense that if your dopamine is low, if you're lacking that motivation, energy, inspiration, you crave things like caffeine, speed, cocaine, certain strains of marijuana, those uppers, right? We call them uppers. Aspartame. Okay. I know so many people that are truly addicted to like diet drinks because of this aspartame, which is horrible for you. Um, Chocolate. Now, the crazy thing is, alcohol is in every single one of these. I think it's like the only one that's in every single one of these, like addiction craving columns. Um, and so then we look at serotonin and we look at things that are going to like kind of calm down and relax the nervous system, like sweets, alcohol, starches, ecstasy, certain strains of marijuana, chocolate, tobacco. All right. So just depending on your brain chemistry and different ratios and imbalances, and again, we know there's a lot of other factors involved in these things as well. But we're looking at um, these things are correlated not only to things like depression, anxiety, also OCD, of course, sleep issues, and moreover, all right, we'll go ahead and slide over to this one now. So this is the same type of thing, inadequate serotonin and or dopamine levels, and what diseases and conditions they contribute to. So, over here with obesity, obesity is not like you're just addicted to food. It's so much more to it than that, and perhaps if y'all request it, we'll go more into that in a different video, but on another channel. But then we have these other diseases. Now, mind you, these low serotonin and dopamine levels have a lot to do with genetics, but they also have a lot to do with deficiencies, amino acid deficiencies, vitamin and mineral deficiencies that carry those things out. So let's look at these things that have been researched and studied and found to be correlated with these deficiencies. So we have things like alcoholism, um, allergy-induced asthma, bipolar, Crohn's disease, hormone dysfunction, IBS, Lyme disease, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, restless leg syndrome. You can zoom in and go through this this as well. And so, of course, these things are going to manifest differently in different people because we are all genetically different, right? And even, study after study that they've done on identical twins that are genetically identical, epigenetics is a factor where certain parts of genes can either be expressed or suppressed. They can be turned on or off. So this even happens in identical twins. All right. So I just wanted to point this out to you. I thought, this was really fascinating to me when I first came across it. It was during the pandemic. I had a lot of, clients and people reaching out to me, struggling with their mental health, and myself included, and being the research person that I am, this is what I came across. And I thought, why is this not common knowledge? Because when we supply our bodies with the nutrients that it needs, it begins to balance itself out. So again, that's a lot of the issue with psychiatric medications, for example. And I'm not judging or knocking anything. Sometimes they can be very helpful, but oftentimes they can exacerbate symptoms or cause other symptoms, okay? Because they don't image your brain. They don't take data of your neurotransmitter levels and your nutrient levels, and they just, they give you a medication based on what you're telling them, and they really have no clue. They don't look. Psychiatrists are one of the only specialists that don't look at the organ they treat. They don't have any actual images or data to go on, right? So it really messes with your brain, and that's why nutrients are so important, because it really helps balance things out. And I was on a psychiatric medication to boost my serotonin for over a decade, and it was so difficult to come off of that medication, and I could not experience the full benefit of balance, of brain chemistry balance, until I was finally able to come off of that medication. And those types of things you do have to wean off of, because they are literally the only supply of certain neurotransmitters. And again, when we just suddenly shut off that supply and our body is no longer manufacturing on its own, a lot of really uncomfortable and even life-threatening things can occur. Right? So, I hope you found that as interesting and as fascinating as I did, and I hope that gives you some food for thought, pun intended. All right, so though we cannot control our genetic makeup, okay, we can't control how we were born, our DNA, we can utilize epigenetics, okay, outside influences, diet, lifestyle, experience, cognitive function, mindful things, all those different factors, lowering toxicity and acidity in our body, all kinds of different things. We can utilize epigenetics to work in our favor and propel the healing process. And we will explore these concepts more in subsequent series. Okay. But I definitely wanted to touch on that. And natural nutrients are so vital. I'll give you this little tip, because synthetic nutrients actually deplete our body of real nutrients that our body can fully utilize. So just know that for now. So compassionate support systems. This is so important. Support from family, friends, and community plays an absolutely critical role in recovery, fostering an environment of understanding and empathy. This compassionate framework encourages individuals to seek help without fear of judgment, which is essential in combating the stigma associated with alcoholism. Okay? So many people they're unwilling to accept their condition because it is so judged and it is so stigmatized. And they're not even willing to accept that, much less willing to go and seek attention and help for that. And this truly needs to change. And that's why I'm doing this, because we have this way outdated, primitive stigma in view of these conditions, and it should not be that way. We understand far too much about it now. So I have a tip for you to begin fostering compassion and supportive understanding, because again, you know I have lived through this, and I know, and I've been on both sides of it. I've been the one battling the disease, and then I've been the one trying to help someone battling. Right? And I know that there's feelings of just, anger. Anger is really rooted in fear, you know. And so the more fearful we are for a loved one, the more angry we can become, because anger is just a way to redirect it, and so think about, that's just a little side tip, complete side note to keep in mind. Whenever you're feeling angry, see if you can pinpoint the fear at the root of that anger. But anyhow, so and we just we just don't understand. It's hard for us to understand, like, why are they doing this? Why do they keep drinking? Their life is falling apart, and everybody's hurt. And the thing is that the person suffering doesn't understand any more than you do, right? um and so here is a tip that hopefully will help you cultivate some level of empathy, which will evolve into compassion. And that is to prepare for and carry out a 3-day, it's not really fast, it's just a diet consuming only water, whole raw foods such as fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. Now, you can eat as much of that as you want to. Okay, there's no limit, so you shouldn't go hungry. All right. It's a supply of your macronutrients and micronutrients in a much more wholesome way that our body can utilize. All right. And of course, if you have some kind of diet regimen, you're working with your medical care professionals, as always, please consult with them before you make any dietary changes. However, this is not only going to be beneficial for you to cultivate some level of empathy, but it's really healing for the body in any and all conditions. This is our natural human diet. You think about it, we weren't born with claws and fangs. We don't, it's not appetizing to us to just go attack an animal and start eating it out in the wild, right? This is the natural, or this is God's natural order. We were designed to live off the earth without interference of fire or machinery, right? And that is what's very healing to the body, to the brain, to for any and all conditions. All right, so you're going to be helping yourself at the same time, and it not even, see if you can even do it one day. All right, because this is a very, this is a difficult thing for most people to do, and this will expose your addiction to components of processed foods. All right. And when I say addiction, it doesn't mean that you always have chocolate every day, or you always have chips every day, or this or that. It's the addiction to these chemicals, additives, preservatives, dyes, all these things that, whether unintentionally and oftentimes intentionally, are put in our food for their addictive qualities so that you will come back and keep purchasing it again. All right. So, this will expose, whether or not you have a food addiction, and just the combination of things. For example, the combination of dairy and bread, it increases in your endorphins, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. It alters your brain chemistry. Okay, the combination of starches with meat does the same thing. All right, so just because you're not always consuming the exact same food doesn't mean you don't have food addictions. All right, and to really, and doing this little experiment is, it just like, you realize that it's not even when when you're so determined, I can do this. You realize how difficult it really is, and you're like, oh well, I'm still eating plenty, I still have all these fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, but you still have this compulsion for other things. And this is just for you to have some level of empathy and compassion for those who are addicted to substances that are much more highly addictive than food. So try that out, see how that experiment goes. Let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. All right, so educational initiatives to combat stigma. That's what I'm doing here. So if you're getting some value here, if this is helping you in any way, please do share it. I encourage you to share it. Again, we all need to be sharing these things with our kids at an age appropriate level, because, as children, we don't understand these things, and we think, oh, well, my mom or dad or whoever doesn't love me enough. I'm not lovable enough. And we're angry and confused, and we carry these things all the way into and throughout adulthood. And so when we have a better understanding of these things, it really helps to mitigate those negative emotions. So education is pivotal in reducing the stigma surrounding alcoholism, which often discourages affected individuals from seeking help. The stigma, again, they don't, it's just guilt, shame, stigma, judgment. Initiatives that promote awareness and understanding can pave the way for a more compassionate society, ultimately easing the burden on those struggling with the disease and their loved ones, for all who are involved and all who are affected. Okay. So, that kind of wraps up this video portion. This is just a synopsis, an overview. Not everyone likes to read, but hopefully this gives you some idea. And if you do want to acquire the free book in PDF form, and or if you want to be notified regarding the release of new content for the Invisible Tears series. That includes more videos and the next books in the series. Just go to theremnantrise.org and submit your name and email with your message, and simple as that. And again, if this gave you any value, if you learned anything, what if you think this might help anybody, please like it and share it. It just helps to get it in front of more people, because this is something that we are long overdue. We are long overdue to reform the way we perceive this disorder, disease, condition. And we are long overdue for the way we approach treatment. Okay. So, if you would like to join this mission with me, please do. And I would love to hear back from you, any feedback or, anything else you would like for me to share. So thank you so much for joining me on this. This is really my heart, my mission, my ministry. And I really do appreciate your time and attention and being open-minded and willing. So thanks again. Blessings to you, and I will see you in the next video.